Dr. Peninah, you have covered a little bit about you're bilingual. You speak very well, fluent in English and Kiswahili, and also at the same times before this interview, you have talked about the connections between your both parents, your mother and your father. Talks a little bit about them in connections with the Thanksgiving.
Oh my goodness, I cannot give thanks without talking about my father, a noble Kikuyu man who knew about children's psychology, and he really made sure he educated all his daughters, his children, during a time when it was not a thing to educate women. That was before, of course, before independence, and therefore he did educate his 6 daughters and 1 brother. And my mother, on the other hand, is the reason why I know how to give thanks, because she also taught us that in everything you give thanks, and she taught us about prayer. So combining my father teaching us the power of education, the power empowering us in education, my mother empowering us through prayer and thanksgiving. I find it a very wonderful and such a privilege to have had such a background, and no wonder I want to give back and what I've been given.
So you have talked a little bit before the independence. This is way back in 1960s, in late 60s or early 60s in Kenya, because Kenya got its independence back in 1963. Yes. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about the education now? As a woman who is well educated in Kenya and also here in the United States, let's first talk a little bit about in Kenya now, about the education system.
Currently or during?
During before the independence in Kenya.
Yeah. Education has really changed, has gone through different changes. As far as I can remember, during those days when I was going to school, more men were going to school. And apparently, culturally, most people believe that women, after a certain age, they get circumcised, and then and especially in the Kikuyu tribe, and then they get married. And so they did not need to go to school. But the men would go to school because they are supposed to take care of the family. So that's how it was, and then we have seen changes after independence. There is equal opportunity for women and men, and it's interesting that those changes have taken place. Yeah.
So you started with your education. You talk about as you went to school to becoming. You studied education and economy. Talks a little bit about the corporate organizations back then in Kenya, because your job, if I remember though, you talk about you used to train, and who exactly you were training then in Kenya?
Okay, so I did my first degree was education, but specifically business education. And so many of us, because I did economics and accounting, during that time, that was in the 80s, the farming was in the country. We had coffee, we had tea, and of course I know we still have the same thing. So our job as trainers, we were hired from the university because we had background in education, was to train the managers how to apply economic skills in terms of money, because the cooperatives were lending money to farmers, and also training farmers about how to appropriate the funding that they were given. So there was various training when it came to so that at least they will be able to increase their farming. Yeah.
So.